And welcome into today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, of the Morgan Man Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Cole Morgan. You can find my podcast here on Good Pod HQ, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcast. Links will be down in the description below for you guys to check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Atlanta Reign and their somewhat successful weekend, but we're going to talk about their brother as well, the Atlanta FaZe, who also had a somewhat successful weekend, but then failed at the grandest stage of them all. And also we are talking about the Atlanta Falcons and my thoughts thus far going into training camp season. So without any further delay, let's go to get straight into today's action. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so the Atlanta FaZe's little brother, the Atlanta Reign, had a great weekend. Going into Thursday, June 2nd, the Atlanta Reign defeated the Florida Mayhem in a 3-1 dominant fashion. And then going into Friday, everybody was glued to their phones, their monitors, whatever the case may be. They were glued to it because the Atlanta Reign was going to take on the San Francisco 49ers and successfully did so in a dominant 3-1 fashion. Everybody's looking at the Atlanta Reign. Oh, shit, the Atlanta Reign is legit. Like, they just took down the number one ranked team. And they might just win the entire, Kickoff Clash Tournament. And it was looking like it. So they had to prove themselves worthy on Saturday in that winner's bracket final against the Los Angeles Gladiators, but came up short in a 3-0 fashion in favor of the Gladiators, and the Gladiators would move on to the grand finals in the Kickoff Clash Tournament. So the Atlanta Reign did have a chance to redeem themselves and get a rematch with the Gladiators, but the Dallas Fuel stopped that rematch from happening by defeating the Atlanta Reign in a third place victory and going on to face the Gladiators to where then the Gladiators would win the Kickoff Clash Tournament. So yet again, the Atlanta Reign did place third in the Kickoff Clash Tournament, definitely proving themselves to be a top contender throughout the entire season and going on into the playoffs, which will be in late November. So now moving on over, ladies and gentlemen, to the Atlanta FaZe. The Atlanta FaZe definitely had a great weekend. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about that because Atlanta FaZe, they were pretty much pissed off, losing, Pro AM Classic, losing to Optic, losing pretty much to that team specifically. And then your other opponent come up, the Seattle Surge, who made it, along with the Atlanta FaZe, in the grand final of the Major 3 tournament and beat the Atlanta FaZe in a 5-3 fashion, going through the entire series right here. So your first 3 matches, your hardpoint on Bocage, and then Tuscan. That was all Seattle Surge victories right there. So Seattle went up 3-0. Okay, and you're sitting here thinking, oh my God, they're just 2 maps away from sweeping the Atlanta FaZe. Well, the Atlanta FaZe finally did capitalize and did beat the Seattle Surge in Berlin Hardpoint 250 to 212. Desert Siege in a 6-3 for that search and destroy. But then could not win that control. Seattle did beat them in Berlin Control 3-2. S&D came back around for the Atlanta FaZe on Tuscan and won 6-4. And then Tuscan Hardpoint, where the Seattle Surge would win 250 to 196. So guys, my question to you is, do you really think the Atlanta FaZe has a mental block ever since losing to Optic throughout these times, during the season, and now losing to Seattle Surge? Does that make that mental block even bigger? Me personally, I think it does, because this is just not FaZe's year. I hate to say it, and me being the spokesperson, unofficial spokesperson for the Atlanta FaZe, I'm sitting here thinking, like, gosh, you're good against Toronto Ultra, who is a very dominant team, and you're good against other teams as well. But whenever it comes to that championship form, you guys just absolutely just don't perform. And I hate to say that, talking about the team that I cover. But something's really got to change for this Major Four. You have to win this Major Four tournament in order to consider yourselves, a part of that conversation of, okay, we can win champs this year. Because this Major Four, now Atlanta FaZe was the very first team to qualify for champs this season. So that is already out of the way, because I do believe the Atlanta FaZe is still 5 points above Optic Texas when it comes to CDO point standings. So again, FaZe is locked in right now for champs. So that is definitely a good sign right there. But still, you have to win the Major Four tournament, which is coming up, here very soon, actually, towards the end of the month. Let's see here. Qualifiers will be June 24th through July 10th. So we're just 2 weeks away from June 24th. Pulling up my calendar right now. Yeah. From this Friday, which is tomorrow. Yeah, we're 2 Fridays away from the Major Four qualifiers, and the New York Subliners will be hosting that. So, if you're James Crowder, you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what worked during that Cold War season that can really motivate these boys to step their game up, because from what I'm hearing from certain rumors and certain leaks and websites, a Beezy, out of all players, has had a kind of, I don't know, kind of like a cocky attitude, kind of not taking it as seriously no more. And the coaches has been getting onto him about that. And you can sort of tell that in his gameplay style just a little bit. Maybe towards the end, where FaZe did take on the Toronto Ultra and 1-3-1. Abizi was more focused in that game, but still, whenever it comes to the practice, the coaches do have to get onto him for not really taking things seriously. And that does concern me, because, the Tiny Terrors, what is a COD team going to be like if there's no Tiny Terrors, or the Tiny Terrors are separated? You can't have that happening, and I hope that really does get solved very quickly. And again, the Atlanta FaZe does need to win a major to be in that conversation for winning COD champs. So now moving on over to my last segment of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and that is my thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons thus far, going into pretty much training camp mode, which is, next month. Looking at everything that has happened thus far for the Falcons, you're hosting, a very rare open OTAs at Mercedes-Benz Stadium where fans can see you. So that is telling me right there, you have the confidence already in this player personnel that is, your ideal vision. You have the confidence in the world. You got the right playbook for these certain players. And for you to host an open practice, that makes me feel better. Even though I wasn't out there, because it was just unannounced. When I saw on Twitter, I was like, what? An open OTA practice for fans to see? That's rare. So again, everybody said the energy felt different. Some people, commented saying, hey, it's just a regular season game, just no opponent. Yeah, we're trying to eliminate that negative vibe this season for the Atlanta Falcons, because the Atlanta Falcons definitely is headed in a new direction, a younger direction, I should say. And you really want to support that. You want to support these kids like Desmond Ryder, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, because these guys, and AJ Terrell. I cannot forget AJ Terrell because he is one of the best cornerbacks, yes, in the entire league. I almost forgot his position, or I should just say defensive back, but regardless, AJ Terrell definitely is one of the best defensive players in the entire league as of right now. And with all them players' names that I just named, they are the face of the franchise. You cannot ignore that fact, and we got to support this team. 28-3 is behind us now. This is a whole entire new coaching staff. They're not worried about 28-3. If they were worried about 28-3, then that meant that they were a part of that coaching staff. But this coaching staff is not a part of that. But outside of like the good vibes, but looking at the player personnel from these hype videos, Drake London's catching, dimes. Desmond Ryder's throwing the dimes. Kyle Pitts is, getting in the end zone more now because from what I've seen from last year's hype videos, Kyle Pitts was gaining those yards, but not going into the end zone, even during practice. But now I'm seeing him going into the end zone with the ball in hand with Desmond Ryder. And this is no knock on Matt Ryan, but I'm just saying, first year coaching staff, you really don't have your player personnel that you really want. You're working with what you have. And the only player personnel that you did have was Kyle Pitts because you selected him in the draft. So overall, guys, I feel confident going into training camp. Keep these players healthy. Keep them motivated as well. And I think we'll be in for a great season this year. I'm not going to really sit here and say, this is a Super Bowl season, let alone even a deep playoff season. But I'm going to sit here and really, put my money down to say that this is at least an early playoff exit team right here. You prove yourselves worthy. You make it to the early round of the playoffs. And, you showed the entire rest of the NFL that, hey, 28-3 is behind us. This is the new look Falcons, and we're here to stay. And we're going to win the Super Bowl. So, guys, that is all the time I have for today's episode. I sure hope you did enjoy. And if you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from. Please, please, please give me a 5-star rating on Spotify. It sure does help with making the podcast happen for you, the listener. But until then, guys, all right, Cole Morgan, we'll catch you all later. Peace.